Hey, everybody on here coming to you with this month's Connecting Codes video. And we actually got quite a bit of information to cover here in this session. So, lots going on. A lot of continuation from last month, actually. That happens. March and April have a lot of parallel influences to them. Not exactly, but a lot of parallel influences. Hey, for those of you that don't know who I am and what my work is, I put out this book every stood the side every year. It's called The Code Journey, and it is a daily guide for life on Earth. I'm currently working on the 2025 edition, and even though this is kind of I like to call it a spiritual almanac. It gives the currents and what the energy patterns are for the days and the weeks and months and the years and all of that good stuff. It also shows us a lot about what's happening in our world, and a lot of people have said to me, "Hey, I love, doing your work and I love being a part of it and working with your book and it's changed my life and this and that. But I also like to see, I also see things and want to see things connecting in with our world events. And can you do that?" And that's what actually really stimulated the Connecting Codes videos, was because I know some people don't like to deal with world events and politics and all of those things, but they're important. They're important for us to be aware of, to know, to see what's coming, because a lot of life is about working with foresight. So, hey, if you guys like this video, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share it out, all of the good things. You know what to do in there, and that's one of the ways you can show a little love and support for me and things in here. And yes, I take donations for my work if people want to make donations over on my website, or just message me and I can get you the donation link in there. It should be at the bottom in the comments of the video. I'm pretty sure I've got it in there. But anyways, I enjoy putting these out, and I think it is important for us to know, because when we're aware, then we don't have to get caught off of guard of things. We can work with the foresight. We can understand what's coming. We know, hey, maybe I can go down and check out this event that's happening, or I want to go to this rally or protest or whatever. But there are times that you may look at things and say, yeah, the energies don't look so good. We could be in for a setup there. And we don't really want to get caught in the middle of that. Warned a lot of people about that regarding January 6th, because I saw some stuff coming, and it wasn't looking too pretty, and I knew some people that went anyways and some people that said, "Yeah, I think I'll just stay back," and then they were kind of glad they did. Um, so you know, with world events, it's always interesting because, we're never certain exactly how things are going to play out. This is not about necessarily predicting things, but it's about understanding the currents that are present so that we can operate with some wisdom, so that we don't get caught in a bunch of narratives, so that we don't get caught up in stories, so we know when things are lies, when things, it gives us that heads up to understand where somebody is standing at a particular time. So when we look at these world events, we can come back and and I'm doing some posts on those, by the way, on social media now, on my social media accounts, and making some of those connections and saying, look, here's what was in the daily codes. Here's what was in the monthly codes. Here's what was in these different things. And oops, I'm losing my markers in here. And we can take a look and go, okay, yeah, I get it. I can see this connection. And then we start to understand, was there an ulterior motive? Was this a setup event? Was this, a false flag type event? Or is this going to bring us some exposure? Is this going to bring something else out? Or what are the connections? Is this somebody that got too arrogant? That was one of the cases that I brought up in one of the posts recently. In regards to some things that happened in California where there were some shooting events, and I was like, well, there's not death codes on this, so what was this about? What created these accidents? Oh, it's arrogance. It's somebody that thought they didn't need to listen to somebody else. And so, sure enough, a lot of these things do end up coming out. I made some stuff around the Boeing flights that were having issues, and called out some of that stuff. And so it's very interesting to see how the pieces come together. And hopefully that's what I can do for you in some of these things is again, give you that heads up so you know what you're looking for. You can always come back and replay and watch different parts of the video if you want to, to pick up on what's happening. And then again, watch the social media areas as well, because I'll pick up something here and there. I don't have time to cover it like the people who do it full time. I just don't have the time for that. But I'll try to do these little pieces where I can on things. So delving into what our codes are looking like for the month of August, as they apply to world events and things that we might need to be aware of. First of all, we want to pay attention to teams. Teams is kind of a big component in our monthly energies for April. And we really want to look at realizing that teams are not just a group of people, a specific group of people, right? Like you have a organization or a foundation or something, and that's a specific group of people. But you can also have several individuals who are working as a team together. So, right, we see that a lot, like even in the Senate and the House, right? There are teams of people within those groups. So you have teams of people who will always stick together. They will always vote together. They will they will always kind of back up each other on things. So I think we're going to see more coming out as far as who those teams are. And we want to pay attention and again, realize that it's not just about a particular group of people, but it can be several individuals who are working together. So they might be in different locations, different spots and places, but they might all be working with one another. You might have Carrie Lake working with Kristi Noem. You might have Governor Newsom working with AOC. I mean, you can have all of these teams that are there. So we want to pay attention to those. But we also have the teams of people that we see who are putting out content. And I think this is going to be where we're going to see a lot of things come up as well, because there's been a lot called out, like in the different alternative media arenas lately. And we're seeing more and more of these teams that are coming up. And I'm sure it's on both sides, of things, but like in the truther communities. And, I think they have their value and their place, but there's a lot in the truther community that work as they appear to be individuals, but they're all networked together as a team. And what happens is you start to see this if you start to pay attention, because they all refer you to each other. So, you'll have like 5 or 6 people that are in this team, and they will all reference each other. They will all refer you to those other people that are on their team. And there's a couple of different reasons for this, because part of it is, and maybe a good portion of it is profit. They come into these networks and these groups, and they're profiting off of that. They're making a lot of money by selling each other's products, and there's nothing wrong with selling products. I'm not against that. I'm not against them making some money, but a lot of them come through and they are, you know, coming down hard on people to donate to them when they're, living quite extravagantly, and they'll claim that, that money's going to go to something good or something beneficial or to help an organization. And then the next thing you know, they've just bought another 3 houses places. So we have to be careful, because a lot of times these people will do that. They will push you, oh, go check out so and so's video channel, go check out so and so's podcast, and they end up being networked together. So we have to be careful of those, because when these teams are being established, a lot of them are again pushing each other for business. They're working to push out narratives just exactly the same way the mainstream media does. They get their talking points from whoever it is, usually somebody that's corrupt inside somewhere, that maybe or maybe not has held some sort of government position or whatever. But it's a big scheme, this so-called intel community. A lot of it's just a big scheme. It's a lot of big it makes money for the people that are in the podcasters and things like that. But it doesn't really benefit anybody because they're given a talking point. They all start pushing the same things. We see this in the clickbaiters. They all, again, reference each other. Oh, look at, what this person showed and that person showed, and they all reference each other, and they don't really have any actual factual information in there. So we want to be really, really careful of those teams because they're going to come in the spotlight, and I can see that go a couple of different ways. Either they're going to come out harder, we're going to see more people brought in on their teams, we're going to see more teams created, or we're going to see those teams exposed in things. And I'm sorry, but my nose always itches when I start talking on these on the videos. Um, so that's just a big thing for us to pay attention to in April. Health is still going to be a big thing on the forefront for the month of April. So our bodies are still going to be much more vulnerable to catching things at that time. We're probably again going to see more virus and diseases come out. It's kind of a two-way street. When you look at the corrupt factions of people out there who are behind those things, it's a two-edged sword for them right now because on one hand, they're trying to push it out there and have more people be sick. And then on the other hand, they don't want you to know how, on one hand, they want to promote it and scare people, which isn't working like it did a few years back. um, because, as soon as they start to do that, then, those people who are in office are going to have to be accountable for that. And then the other part of it is if they bring it out too much, then everybody starts researching it, and then it traces back to the corrupt groups or teams of people. And then it just makes them, more, it brings the spotlight on them to see more of what they're doing, which they don't want either, because they don't want people to pay too much attention. They'd rather just have them distracted with not feeling well than to really be paying attention to what's happening. They probably have some other things too that they're doing as well. But yeah, take care of yourself. That's what I'm going to say. Take care of yourself, do your preventative work, get some sunlight, make sure you're getting your exercise, make sure you're getting your nutrients, all of those great things that are going to help you stay healthy and that are going to help you stay well. And particularly now, when we're in allergy season and things like that, and there's a couple of other points in here where the health things come up, uh, our histamine levels are going to be high because we're in allergy season. So think about those things that are going to help keep the histamine levels down in your body. You can research that, do your work on it, talk to people, medical professionals, whatever works for you, and find out more about that. There's a lot of things that we can do to naturally support ourselves in there without having to go drug paths and things like that. You can go to a low histamine diet, that will help. Things like that. I've been working with that myself lately, and that's helping me out a lot. But I don't know what will work for somebody else. You have to figure that out for yourself and do your research on that. But we do want to take extra good care of ourselves. And another component of that is we're going to have a lot of stuff with EMFs coming up in April. So again, if the EMFs become amplified in the month of April, that's also going to put a wear and tear on your body. That's going to create a variety of things. We know the body breaks down with too much screen time, too much phone time, too much game time, all of these things that a lot of people like to do. And that could be amplified. And of course, that's going to be much worse in big cities because, think about those experiments. I mean, gosh, they've been out for at least a decade or so, right? Where you put the phone down and you put some kernels of popcorn there and they can pop the popcorn with it. And, when you have one phone, you get a certain amount. But when you start putting a circle of phones there, right, it just amplifies everything. So when we think about that in a city or an apartment building or something like that, and you've got everybody's electronics and massive electronics in there. It's amplifying all of those EMFs in there, and thus breaking down our bodies a lot in there. So I think we're going to see a couple of more things. I think there's going to be something that's going to be an increase, and we're going to see the results, whether that impacts wildlife or whether that impacts, again, people getting sick, EMF could be used. It could be used, some of the frequencies could be used to take down people's health. We know that's possible. We've seen some of the studies on that. And so that could be something that could be part of the exposure that comes up in there. But one of the things you can also do is unplug things, because just because you power something down doesn't necessarily mean that it isn't still, again, drawing that power and exerting something. So you actually have to unplug things, which, isn't a bad idea anyways. Shut down and turn off the internet at night. Obviously, some places can't do that, right? If you're a business, if you're a hotel or, a B&B or whatever, you can't necessarily do that. But you can if you're in your own home. You can if you're an individual or a family or something like that. If you're an apartment building, no, you can't make everybody else do that, but you can do it for yourself. And that's a starting point. And you might even find that you rest better. And we know that rest is a huge part of keeping you healthy in there. And just minimize some of your time wherever you can, minimize your time on that. I wish I was better at doing that myself, but it's my working period. I minimize it in the summer season. I'm not online as much, which is a good thing in there. Um, Also, we want to look at it's just the basics, the fresh air. You get out and get some fresh air, you're going to get some oxygen in your system. The more oxygen you can get in your system, the more it's going to help to offset some of those EMFs, because one of the things the EMFs does is to shut down our oxygen levels. So, if you're having a respiratory virus of some sort, the EMFs get amplified up. Your oxygen levels are going to go down. It's going to be harder for you to breathe. That's a natural thing in a way, that's a sequence of events that you see happening. But if you can get out and spend time in parks, spend time in fresh air along the beaches, where, whatever your terrain is, do some more walking, things like that, then that's going to help a lot with there. April 1st to April 19th in our monthly influences. We got to be very careful at this time, because we're going to see a lot of those who are working for corrupt agendas, trying to provoke people, trying to provoke them into rebellion, get them angry, get them reactive in there. We're going to see some calls for violence. So whether that is calling and activating gangs, gang activities, cartels, or anything like that. We can see a lot of things. We have a lot of activists that could be brought forward to help magnify violence. So we've got to be very, very careful about this. We don't want to get in that reaction. We don't want to let them provoke us. We might be feeling that inside, but as soon as, man, we display it, it's going to be used against us. And it's not going to be a pretty road if we go down that road. So we want to watch for that. I think we're definitely going to see some of those calls for violence coming out. And it's going to be against people who are not the compliers. It's going to be against the people who are calling out the BS. And they will use whatever group they can use to do that. There's, some groups have been burned, they've been used already. And so they're not necessarily going to be willing to be used again, but we'll see. There's always some, they will bring in paid agitators. We know they do that a lot as well in there. So we want to be very careful of that. And they're going to call violence too, particularly, I think, in this month, on people who are being personally responsible for caring for their own health, instead of just following government guidelines or mandates or healthcare. We know in some countries and some places they're establishing different mandates again for different things that they're dealing with. Then the people that are sitting there going, well, I think I'll take care of myself, thanks, because what you're suggesting doesn't help me or work for me. And I know what does. I think I'll go for a walk in the woods or something like that. Those are the people that are going to come under fire. The people who are, looking at alternative paths in there, and not just willing to, blindly comply to things. They want to do their research on things. So those are the people that are going to come most under scrutiny. That are going to be the people who are um, going to have people coming after them to a certain extent. Does that mean everybody who doesn't follow isn't? No, but I'm sure that there will be certain places or certain people who will be used as an example for these types of things. And a lot of unfairness is going to be used to provoke people. So that unfairness is probably going to show up in the form of double standards, two-tiered systems, um, and just making things unfair. We're going to give this group of people this, but you can't have the same thing. So we want to be extra careful on that when we see that happening. One of the things that brought my attention, now I'm filming this on the 19th, so I'm sure there's plenty that's going to come up between now and April. But one of the things that was just coming out in the last 24 hours that I could see playing into this is the situation of squatters. And I will give another example of that later. But there was just recently in Queens, New York, a lady, she's like, her grandparents own the home, and she currently owns this home. It's worth, I don't know, like $1 million or something. It's in Queens, New York. And somebody went in and squatted. Now, I think there's a couple of different sides to this story in there. The person that's squatting in there says that, she didn't pay him some money. So who knows? There could be certain things like that. But squatting is a big thing that's coming up. In other words, somebody going into a place, if they reside in that place for 30 days, they can take ownership on the place. And so we can see a lot of people that could be at risk of losing homes during this time. Will it all happen? But I think, no, I'm not saying that everybody's going to lose their home in this time, or a lot of people. But there will be some of these instances coming up where people who maybe have owned their homes for a couple of generations, the home's been in the family for that long, they own it outright. Somebody comes in and they move into it and they lose it. And that's an unfairness that goes on. And so this is going to probably create an interesting mess, but it will be that type of a thing that will be used to provoke people. We're seeing in some of the cities, like the New York region and stuff, where they are forcing people to take in immigrants that are coming across the border, undocumented, um, illegals, if we want to say that, and they're being forced into people's homes. And they're being forced into people having to house them. Some people are housing them willingly, some people are not. And here again, there will be this aspect of seeing what they can do to then take that property. I've seen some other things coming up that indicate property seizures starting to happen. I can't say that we're going to see this massive amount of it, but I think they're going to test the waters on things, and they're going to get people in, and then it's like, people are going to start losing stuff. These are hard lessons. These are really hard lessons for people, and I wish people could see things ahead of time instead of going down this route, but they don't, and that's sadly what happens in situations. We're also going to probably see a lot more court cases and attempts to hold the corrupt accountable during this period of time. So that's another piece, and that's going to bring out that we know we've got huge two-tier justice system going on right now, and I think that may be more evident, and we will see more of that where if you are supporting certain people, you can go out and commit all kinds of crimes and murders and everything else, and you can do whatever, and you can, misappropriate funds, taxpayer funds, and not have anything happen to you. And if you're not aligned with certain people, then, you can so much as sneeze in the wrong direction and have you know, $1,000,000 fines put on you. Um, so it's gonna get interesting in that aspect, and I think we just have to be very, very careful in some of this. But even where we feel like justice isn't being upheld, keep in mind that there is still that exposure. There is still things coming out, and there still is awareness that's being made because it becomes more and more absurd with each attempt, and that gets more and more people to be able to see what's happening and things. Again, lots of illness and health issues coming up, I think, during the month of April. So a lot of people coming down with things, a lot of people struggling with that. It's going to lead people to rethink. And here's going to be the interesting thing. It's going to make people rethink how detrimental is my lifestyle. If I'm having to work 2 or 3 jobs to put food on the table, then, you know, what can I be doing differently? This job I'm going into and it's full of pollutants and chemicals and all kinds of things, and it's tearing me down and my body's starting to dysfunction and things like that. So I see lifestyle shifts coming for people, and that's going to throw an interesting piece into the mix, as we can say, in there, as people start to rethink things, because a lot of people are saying, this materialism isn't worth it. I'm not really benefiting from it, and so I might as well be out doing something that I love more. If I'm gonna struggle for finances, I might as well love what I'm doing as opposed to, you know, going out and working a lot and still not having much more than what I have, in there. So I think there will be that. I think we're gonna see a lot of people leaving corporate environments, big companies, those areas, the corporate world for self-employment. And in a way, this is going to be good because it's going to give people, again, more power. But of course, those who are corrupt that don't want people to have power or have independence or freedom or things like that are not going to be real happy about that. They're going to have to then find ways, well, how do we come down on the self-employed people um, on things? So I think we're going to see an increase of people going into trades. We're going to see an increase of many people getting cast out of their jobs. And that is probably going to come as the result of being replaced by AI or also illegals. And when you look at that, it's um, it's going to be an interesting component. We're seeing that with Tyson right now, right? Tyson's taken a lot of flack because they just fired 1,400 people and they're replacing them with illegals that have come across the border. So they're going to push illegals into these jobs, like a company like Tyson, for example, and there's several other. They're not the only ones. There's many others out there, and they're going to push them into these jobs. So you have people who are here that have a lot of disturbances. I'm not saying all of them do, but we've already had country heads come out and say, "Oh yeah, we're dumping our criminals and our people from our mental institutions into your country." That's already been said. That's already known. That's nothing new. That's nothing that's being made up. The tapes are out there where, like Mexico's president and stuff has said they're doing that. And other countries south of our border are doing that. And other countries are experiencing this too. Florida is getting an influx from Haitians right now coming in. So when we look at that, and they're coming in with health issues, mental, physical diseases, a variety of different things. Okay. And then they're going into a plant like Tyson, which is manufacturing and producing your food. Okay. And you put them in these food plants. So where is some of the illness going to come from? It's going to come from food contamination is where it's going to come from. So you do this, you pull these, you do this exchange workers in there and you put in people who are not healthy, who are not well into these areas where you're working food. It's all part of the bigger plan. I hate to say it, but it is. It's all part of the bigger plan. So we're going to see a lot more food illness. And then what does that do? That covers up the other viruses and things that are being spread around in our world. Because then they can blame it on food contamination. Well, yeah, food got contaminated. Oh, that's the health workers' problem. Oh, that's the restaurant workers' problem. And it probably wasn't. It was probably contaminated long before it ever got to the restaurant. And this is why I come back to saying, go to your farm to table local restaurants who are doing things locally, who are doing things with your local farmers that you know. If you can do that because you'll have a lot less chance of getting sick and getting these illnesses. And it won't just be food, it'll be other things. I mean, you got to look at um, I think Pfizer was another one that's doing this, you know. So here again, you're going to have a whole bunch of things, you know, what other kind of drugs are going to be put in with your medicines. So people, maybe they've taken a medicine and never had a problem with it before, might all of a sudden start having problems with that. So we really want to stay on top of these things. We really want to be aware. You want to go check out those companies who are doing this. There's plenty of people that are posting about it out there, and check that out. Now, some of this aspect will also bring victories as people are forced to give up addictions and addictive patterns, and they're going to have to choose either their addictions or health. So here again, this is going to be very interesting because, of course, our corrupt factions would love to have everybody just so addicted to drugs and everything else. They would love to have them addicted to street drugs and alcohol in addition to prescription drugs and even, you know, even your supplements. You know, you got to look, there's a lot of corrupt factions that own the supplement companies these days too. You know, so if something's in a capsule, you're still susceptible to a lot of stuff coming through that. So paying attention and watching that, and you're going to have people that are really, they're going to have to make that decision. Am I going to choose my addiction or am I going to choose health? And you're going to have a lot of people starting to choose health, which is going to be interesting because, you know, as the corruption forces people into this, it's going to backfire in some areas at least, or some places, or in some sections of the population, because people are going to choose health. And then what? That's going to start crashing out some of the pharmaceutical industry. That's going to start crashing out, you know, some of these other areas of things as people give it up and say, yeah, my body can't handle this, or my body collapsed here and I can't do that anymore. And so I think we're going to see some big shifts that way. I see also money pressures that are coming in during this first through the 19th time. That's going to bring people into simplifying their life. Again, coming back to rethinking things and going, wow, you know, do I want to have any kind of experiential life, or am I just going to work and work and work and never enjoy anything? Um, and that's going to bring more economical crashes, because what happens when people simplify their lives and you get up down to having to look at what's needed versus what they want, and they're going to come back and say, well, we can do without the candy, we can do without the chips, we can do without this, we can do without that. And they're going to start paring those things down. And they're going to say, yeah, we don't need to go to the movies anymore. We will just do whatever's on TV, or we'll have family night and we'll play games. So maybe we won't even have a, you know, TV subscription anymore, or things like that. So as people start to move in this direction, we're going to see some economical crashes coming from that, because people won't be purchasing these excess stuff. They're going to find maybe somebody else who's done using what they have, and then they're going to, you know, repurpose it, reuse it, or pass it down or something else, as opposed to going out and buying something new. So I think we're going to see some crashes in the retail markets. That could definitely be coming, as people won't replace stuff as much. They won't be looking for just that expendable pieces in there. Um, Freedom from feeling suffocated. This is going to be a big thing. So we're going to probably see some attempts coming down the line here in April, in this first you know, 2/3 of April, to keep us separated from things of true value. Why is that? Why don't they want you to have experiences, a good life, to appreciate things, to have some happiness, to have some family time, these sorts of things? Because these things keep your heart space open. These things actually help to keep you healthy. They actually help you to keep your mind thinking well. And so if they separate you from things you love, if they create issues, whether that is with pets or whether that is with separating people, saying you can't communicate with this person, or, different things like this. You can't see your friends, whatever that is. You can't have any freedom to go do certain things. That brings up all kinds of things, whether you're talking depression, whether you're talking PTSD issues, whether you're talking health issues. But basically, it's a freedom issue, is what it is. So when you suffocate the freedom and you bring people into confinement, the longer they're in confinement, the more willing they are to comply in order to get the smallest piece of freedom that they can get. What people miss in that is once we start giving that up, then um, that freedom becomes taken away more and more and more. It becomes less available. So it's like, okay, you've stayed confined for 2 weeks, so now we're going to let you go out for 1 week. And you go out for 1 week and you enjoy it and you come back. And it's like, okay, well, now you're going to be confined for 3 weeks. And so now if you want freedom, you have to make it through 3 weeks. Oh, and we're not going to give you a full week out. We're just going to give you 5 days out. And, so people who start to go a little stir crazy, it's like, okay, 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 I'll take it. I'll stay, I'll do it. I'll do it just to get that freedom, um, as opposed to holding on. And then, so they go out for their 5 days and they come back. Okay, well, now you've got to stay confined for 2 months before you can go out again. And you're only going to get 3 days out. This is the way the game works. This is how freedom gets removed. It's one of the ways. So we need to make sure that we are exercising those rights. We need to make sure that we are putting an emphasis on living life and on doing what we can to increase that freedom. Now, in 2020, we saw that, right, where grandparents couldn't see their grandchildren. All the guilt was laid on people. If you do this, you're going to kill grandma, you're going to kill, the grandson or whatever. These are the games that are played to remove our rights and our freedoms. And we have to be willing to stand up there. We all have enough common sense to know that if we're sick and we're really sick, we stay home. We stay home. We're not around those people. But if we're not, there shouldn't be any reason not to be able to be around those people. We have to realize that there's a bigger risk. There's a bigger risk in there when we, again, do the confinement piece and the shutdowns or things like that. Now, whether we actually experience that, I don't know. I don't think a lot of people are going to tolerate it, but we don't always know exactly what they're going to come out with to do that. There can be all variety of ways that things can be used. What I see also in here, I see more and more, again, people are giving up these excesses, and I think people are going to move away from so-called entertainment. And we're going to see an increase in people getting out into nature, into parks. So, we've got the summer season coming on. If you plan to be out in the park areas and nature areas, be prepared that there's probably going to be a lot more people out there on the trails. There's probably going to be some limitations and restrictions on being able to get into park areas because of that. So you really want to think a little bit about where can you go, what can you do, probably see more people at beaches, things like that, because they're needing that. They need to be outside. There's going to be a stronger need for that. And in many ways, that's very good. From a health perspective, that's going to be really good in a lot of ways of people getting out and being more active. In other ways, it's going to be hard, because if everything's so crowded that you can't enjoy it at all, that's going to be a little bit challenging. Now, as we move into the end of April, the 20th, through the end of the month, we're going to see that rebellion energy. It's going to get amplified during that time. So again, that provocation, that calling for violence, all going to be amplified. And most likely that's going to be amplified at that time because they're probably not making as much progress as they would like in getting people riled up and angry during that time. So we're also going to see things in connection with this because people are going to probably be a little more on edge because people want to know the truth. They want to know the truth, and corruption wants to try to hide the truth, and they don't want to be exposed for things. And so that's where we're going to see these provocations coming up. People are We have to be careful of the patience thing, in there. We all want to see things happen quickly, right? And fast. But in the process of that, we can get ourselves into trouble. So we need to be willing to take those breaths, proceed with things through legal, lawful, ethical actions, and not be provoked into reaction. Take that breath back, find out the facts, get out of our perception and our reaction, and then move forward with it on there. But yeah, I definitely would see that that's being amplified at that time. Could there be some false flags at that time? Yeah, there could be. There could be there could be some stage things to try to make it look like certain groups, and and it's not. We see that with the Patriot Front group. They're FBI associated. We see that with other groups out there as well. Again, paid agitators in there to try to make it look like they dress them up. Here's your clothes, but of course it's like a uniform. Everybody's wearing the same clothes. And, that just doesn't happen in a natural rebellion of things. So want to be careful of that. We need to look at diffusing some of the extremes that are going on, because it's the extremes that are creating the battles and the fights and trying to get us to argue with each other and provoking things. So we need to see what we can do to diffuse that. And part of that is staying, open, keeping things open and honest, discourse between each other, bringing people of these different expertises, different backgrounds, different pieces of wisdom and views together, and letting those open discourses unfold some solutions. I would expect, Elon with the X space, and Tucker's been doing some of this. He just had Chris Cuomo on one of his shows recently, here in the middle of March, and having some open debates, and having them hosting opposing views. So, certainly that always riles up a few people. Why are you hosting that person on your show? If we don't start doing this and we don't start coming into some of this open discourse, we're never going to get rid of the lies. And if we're going to get rid of the lies that oppose us, we have to be willing to see the lies that are on the side we're standing as well. And so that's going to be very important. And we have to be, and we can't get there without open discourse. We can't get there without sharing these differences of views and sharing the differences of concerns. And when you do this, then you can actually hone in on the truth. And actually, I think we can get more of the truth to come out through open discourse than we can sitting in the polarized extremes. Because in the polarized extremes, we're only seeing one point of view. We're not really getting the full picture of things. And each side is making their videos come out the way that they want them to do, to present their point of view, to make them right. And so until we're willing to say, hey, a lot of them on both sides are being doctored, a lot of them on both sides are being made to support a particular point. So until we can come in and have a reasonable conversation, it's going to be very hard to resolve things. But I think we will see more of that coming up, especially because more people are going to be demanding for some of these things. They're going to want to bring it out. They're going to want to talk about it. And that's going to be, I think, a very interesting piece to watch and pay attention to in there. Lots of power battles coming up among influential people during this month, and power structures. So dictators, authoritarians, those working under those styles are going to move to restrict our rights and freedoms during this time. They might not be able to get away with it yet in America, but they will be able to, look at countries like Canada, look at countries like France, look at some of these other countries that still have these dictator styles, in there, China, whoever. That are operating this way, and we're probably going to see them coming down on some of the rights and freedoms, removing some of them. More issues are going to surface around our Constitution here in the United States. So we're probably going to see some sort of movement that is an attempt to take away constitutional rights. I also see that we could see things coming up with the UN and the WEF becoming much more active during this later part of April, and even extreme actions being taken here. And this one of the things I remember it was talked about a while back, and this could possibly come out during this time period, is again turning over the powers to the UN and to the WEF to handle things on a global level instead of allowing countries to handle them. Basically, it forfeits the rights of the Constitution and the rights of the individual countries to do what they want to do, and it holds them under these structures. So we could see something more come out around that, but I think definitely we're going to have more attacks on constitutional rights. I talked about the two-tier systems earlier. One of the things that we recently saw here in March that is similar to that, and it could be a magnified version of that, or other things parallel to that, is they're handing illegals guns, and regardless of drug records, just ignoring all of the normal standards of gun ownership with them, um, and handing them guns, but they want to take them away from citizens. Yeah, talk about two-tiered. That's a two-tiered example right there. Giving one group of people guns and taking them away from another group of people. Saying, yeah, you can have guns to rob and kill and shoot people and do all kinds of things, but you're not allowed to have one to defend yourself. That's a two-tiered system, for example, in there. So we want to watch these power battles. Now, what is going to happen is I think we will see some extreme things attempted during this last part of April, and that's going to bring out some whistleblowers. So some of those people that are right there on the inside, they're going to hit their breaking point and they're going to come out and they're going to start talking. And that's also where we could see the open discourse happening, could be coming from whistleblowers coming out. So that could be very interesting. Lots of shifts and transitions. I think we're going to see a lot of job loss happening at the end of April. So we're really going to see some of these things that we've been hearing about for a long time probably coming into play around that point. And lots of changes, the corrupt attempting to fire or cast out good people. Again, that's the example I gave with Tyson, and creating a lot of hardships. Why? Because they want you dependent. They want you dependent on the system. And then ironically, once they get you on the system or get you into the system, they don't want to give you things. And I know that firsthand because, I've had to look at some things and, on one hand, I'm at the top of the list for things. And on the other hand, I'm at the bottom of the list for things and I'll never see them based on what they're doing right now. So we definitely have to be careful of that. And, our health at this time is not going to support working multiple jobs. So when people get pushed out of one area, a lot of people are not going to be physically able to just keep, working 80, 90 hours a week. And so I think, again, that's going to be some of the cause of people coming up, standing up, speaking up, things like that in there. Now, as far as actions being taken, during the month of August, this will be going on, April. Oh, thank God we're not to August yet. I'm not ready to be there yet. Actions that we're going to see taken in April. Again, this power battle's being magnified. So we have a lot of that power battle energy, probably strongest there at the end of April, because we know that we already have that in the monthly influences going on. But the power battles that we see happening in April are going to be much nastier than normal. And this is going to be due to inferiority, superiority patterns that are going on. And the interesting thing is they really lie in the same place. And that is because when people feel inferior, they then want to prove how much they are superior to people. So if you have people who are operating in corruption, who are not working in integrity, things like that, and they're in positions of power and they don't feel a basic confidence, a basic self-worth, or things like that. They will have inferiority complexes going on, and they want to then be ultra powerful and ultra aggressive, um, to show, to get people to believe that they're superior in some way. And we could see that even happening between world leaders wanting to one up each other. I'm more superior than you are. And things like that. So that can really change who's in control of things, on a world perspective or a world view in there. We're going to see a lot of misuse of power coming up in April as well. So again, a lot of people just, I don't care. I don't care. And that's what you've got in a lot of these top positions in a variety of countries. You've got a lot of people that are just like, I don't care what the rules are anymore. I'm just going to do what I want to do. And if I feel like blowing something up, I'm going to blow it up. If I feel like releasing prisoners, I'm going to release prisoners. These are the things that we're going to be dealing with. So a misuse of power, uh, overstretching their authority, in things. And I think ultimately, though, this will backfire on them because you've got two things that happen when you do that. First of all, you push people to become more self-sufficient in there. And second of all, you hit a point that, once you start breaking certain limitations and certain laws or regulations or things like that as a world leader, people are going to come after you for that. They're definitely going to come after you for that. And you'd be foolish to think that they won't. So many of these people think that they've got their criminal syndicate, whatever you want to say, their network of people so strong that nothing's going to happen to them. Well, they've got some rude awakenings coming as well in that. But in the meantime, what they're going to do is they're going to try to get a lot more abusive on people. They're going to try to victimize people a lot more because, again, when you're losing power and control, what do? You become more aggressive to try to get that control back. And the more you see people stepping out of your control and power, the more aggressive you get to try to get that back. And the way you do that is through regulations and restrictions and um, physical challenges and job losses and things like that. So, how they'll cover all of those numbers up. Well, they'll cover them up because, like I said, they'll put the illegals or other people in there, which is what they're doing already with some of the corporations. We know Amazon's doing that. We know Tyson's doing that. We know Pfizer's doing that. We know Airbnb is doing that. There's a lot of companies who are doing that actually. And so they're going to say, look, we added all these jobs. Well, no, they didn't add jobs. What they did was they got rid of people and then they brought in other people to those jobs. So they didn't really add jobs, so we have to be very careful. They're going to play with these numbers a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. So they're going to make them seem like there's something different than they are in there. So this isn't going to be a true thing in there. So we've got to watch that. There's going to be a push to create betrayal between friends, division between people. And this is being done out of self-preservation. So we may see actually very much people who get so scared that they start turning in friends, start turning in neighbors for things, start doing stuff. And this is usually because they're being blackmailed in some way. They think that they're going to preserve themselves in the process of doing that. And that's going to be a nasty thing. I think that most likely we will see this most evidently in places like Chicago, New York, California, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, Oregon, Denver, Colorado, around that area. These are the areas that we're most likely to see that happen because certainly there are going to be other areas they're not going to play those games in there. Fortunately, what I see is even though they're going to make a lot of attempts, they can make the attempts, they can try, but I think a lot of them are going to be diverted. I think a lot of them are going to be blocked. And the reason they're going to be blocked is because they are not in divine alignment. They're working out of greed. They're working out of taking advantage of people. And we have those energy patterns that, when you do that, you're going to be blocked. So again, they can try things. It's just kind of like some of the things they've already tried to put through, and then it ends up in the Supreme Court. And then the next thing you know, the Supreme Court says, no, you can't do that, and blocks it from going through. So We'll have to watch it. We'll have to see. That's my hope in the piece is that these things, a lot of them will be blocked and they won't be able to fully execute things along the way. Also in our actions, we're going to see an increase in competitions, and that's going to be provoked by those that are working with the corrupt factions. Those that care about us will help us to take command of our own life. They'll support the self-sufficiency in people. They'll help them to learn how to be strong in their own. You know, it's kind of like that thing that if you have community that gets cut off from some sort of financial support, then, you know, a real leader will come along and help them to be self-sufficient on their own as much as possible. Um, when you have people that are working in a corrupt network of people, then, you know, they don't care and they're not going to, and they will cut them off. So these are the things. It's a competition game, you know. Do what we want or don't get your funding. Um, this is a competition. That's a form of competition. So I think we are going to see a lot of competitive behaviors. I think we're going to see a lot of people playing these games out there between world leaders. We're going to see whether they're willing to call their bluff. Um, we're gonna see who's the master chess player in the games. I don't know, you know, we're gonna find out, and a lot of this, we're gonna have to just sit back and observe. I mean, we have our places that we can speak up and do things and take action, but, as far as the average person, you know, a lot of this is playing out between world leaders and things. Now from the 2nd through the 26th, as far as where the mindset is for people and, in narratives and things like that. So again, the mindset that's going on is going to be an attempt to push people into addictions and dependencies. So that's going to be one of the things they want to try to program into people. Oh, you've got this disease. Now you need this medication. You need that medication. You need that medication. And the next thing you know, you're taking 7 more medications, right? They want to push people onto addictive drugs during this time. They want to push people over the edge so that they're drinking a lot more or doing things like that that are again connected to addictions uh, in there and these dependencies. Oh, you know, so sorry you lost your job. Well, now you'll just have to be dependent on the government. So there's going to be this mind game that you don't have any other alternatives than some of these things. We have to be very, very careful of that. On the good side, we're going to see a lot more exposure of these lies, of these deceptions. So again, the harder they push, the more they're going to expose themselves on these things. Um, this deception, this manipulation that's going on, and how it's used to remove our freedoms. So we're going to see this aspect of there will be flat out lies and deception going on. We'll probably see these sort of clauses used. Oh, this clause says that we can do this and do that. Um, Fake or misconstrued laws that are going to come up in attempts to, again, overturn the Constitution. Our Constitution is going to be under attack in April. You know, that's the bottom line in it. We're going to see where people are taking money for personal extravagance. So, you know, maybe there's more coming out, you know, on Fannie Willis's case. Oh, excuse me, Fonnie Willis. There might be more coming out on that. We're going to see more of where people have been scammed, where maybe their taxes are being misappropriated, um, in things, misuse of spending by boards coming up in there. So again, people will start to see, oh, this was the lie that you told me. This is what you told me you could, you know, you were going to use it for. This is not what you're using it for, clearly. So a lot of this scamming of people. And I think that that scamming of people, we're going to see that a lot also in our false prophet arena, our ministry arenas, where you have these people out there, you know, donate, 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 it goes to our ministry, or donate, 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 it goes to my work. And then uh, again, the next thing you know, they're buying a mansion, they're using that money to buy people gifts, they're going on nice vacations and all of these other things, and it's just scamming. You know, they're just scamming people and things. we're going to see exposure on crimes against humanity, animals, and the earth going on. So that tells me right there that we're going to see, um, probably a lot come up actually around the environmental issues when I think about it. Now that I'm putting it together, that wasn't in my notes, but now that I'm thinking about it, that could tie into a lot of environmental issues because when we look at some of the solar farms and the wind turbine farms and these different things where they've told us all these lies about how it's going to save you money on your bills and it's going to be cheaper for you and this and that, and it's actually more expensive, and how much of that has been used to get funding, to scam people out of funding, or um, to add taxes to things for that. And then it's not going to that. So I think we actually could see a lot of exposure. We do know that a lot of those so-called environmental things are not helping the environment, that they are costing lives. And we tie that to the EMFs. We could see more coming out in the connections between those things, uh, or the EMF factors that are coming off of them, and how that's affecting people's health. So you see how these pieces start to tie in together in there. Also, we could see the aspects of well, even those things affect animal life, and they affect our ability to grow crops, and they affect our ability to have food sources, which of course all plays into these narratives because, here again, if you contaminate the food supply and then you make the soil infertile and harder to grow things, then all of a sudden people say, oh yes, please, Mr. Gates, give us your lab food, um, not me, I won't be one of those people, but, there are plenty of people, sadly, that will, because they'll feel pushed against a wall. Again, not that we're gonna make that jump in April, but we will start to see the exposure on these things coming out, and people are gonna start to realize what scams these are and how they've been lied to and how they've been manipulated. So one of the cool things about liars is they always have to use lies to cover up their lies, to cover up their lies, and eventually their lies all catch up with them, and it's always that covering up factor. So the more they try to cover up the lies that they've already told us and use more lies to do it, the more that they get caught in everything there. But I think definitely they're going to try to implant again this thought thing. They're going to go down um, that environmental path and try to work from that angle. And but I think again, I hope it's going to backfire. Some of the influences certainly indicate that, but again, they're going to use these things to try to make us think we have to give up our constitutional rights, um, for some of these narratives, for some of these lies, and uh, and that's not gonna go well with people. So, and then when people again they find out, oh, you've been collecting all of this money for, you know, so-called saving the environment and environmental things, and it's not going for that. That's going to stir up some pretty big controversy, I would say. That's gonna probably trigger some people along the way. Now, from on the 1st of April, and then from the 27th through the end of the month, so just that one day plus the few last days of the end of the month, we've got a lot of upheaval coming in. A lot of it is going to be due to miscommunications, um, attempts to confuse people, presenting false information, all plays into what I was just talking about to a certain extent to get compliance that they wouldn't normally get. So these lies that are coming out, and then they'll come back and say, oh, well, we were right. You just misunderstood us. They love that one. They love that piece. We were right. You just didn't understand us correctly what we were saying, and then they try to backtrack, and then they get themselves in trouble. But a lot of upheaval due to miscommunications. Now, some of it will be genuine miscommunications in there. They will not speak correctly. They will say the wrong things. But again, if you're not having to cover up lies, you don't have as much problem with that as you do when you're lying about things and you're trying to manipulate people over things or trying to present false information. So probably some of these things, where we see them all, they call it like, mockingbird Operation Mockingbird, and everybody's saying the same things through all the different networks and places like that. Well, we'll probably find some that will trip up and say the truth in there accidentally. They'll say the silent part out loud, as they say, uh, in there. So we'll probably see some of that come up in all of this. But you know, the bottom line that's the tough thing that we got to stay on top of is that they don't care if they endanger people with their lives. They don't care if their miscommunications cause lives. And that's the dangerous point in there. And as a result, what we have to do is you know, these will be the days that they really probably will push hard to try to get people to agree to things because their minds are not clear. They're not thinking as well as normal. And so I think that they're gonna try to you know, just really push to get people to agree to things. We'll see some harder pushes at that time. And some of this may be connected to storms, damages, evacuations on things that are going on. Again, where people are caught up in whatever's the drama is of the moment. I mean, I look at it now, and every time we have a big rain, our coastal regions are flooding. They're flooding again and again and again. And so um, they will use some of these things, which people, you know, are not going to have time to stop and think about in the moment. And, you know, they're just going to say, well, you know, you couldn't stop the storm. Well, you know, we all know there's a whole narrative. There's a whole narrative down that line. Yeah, they probably could have. But there's a whole narrative down here. So I just want to give you an example. I'm not saying that this is exactly what's going to happen, but I want to give you an example of how this plays out. You have a storm. You cause everybody to evacuate their home, their towns, their area, right? And in those evacuations, you tell people you can't come back for 45 to 60 days. Okay? You got to leave town. You got to go find someplace else to live. You cannot come back during that time. Well, it won't take that amount of time to clean everything up in there. And so when you come back after 45 to 60 days, in the meantime, what they'll be doing is putting squatters in. You put a squatter in, they're there for 30 days, they own the property. If you vacated the property, and you're going to agree to it, right? Because it's an evacuation of your area. They come in, everything subsides, they put the squatters in, the squatters sit in there for 30 days, they now own your property and people lose their home. This is the type of thing we're going to see. Now, again, I'm not saying that's exactly what's going to happen. I'm not, you know, I don't know that. Don't, you know, I read energy currents. I don't necessarily do predictions of things, but that would be an example of how they're going to work. And this is part of the upheavals. And then they're going to say, oh, well, no, we didn't tell you to evacuate. We didn't tell you that you couldn't come back into your home in that amount of time. No, you must have misunderstood us. We just advised that it wouldn't be very good for you to do that, but we didn't tell you you couldn't. You see how the game is played? This is what they do. This is exactly what I'm talking about with this miscommunications piece. See, they backtrack because they actually did tell you you could not. And then they backtrack on it and said, no, 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 that's not what we said. You see, this is gaslighting. This is brainwashing. This is messing with your head. This is using fear to get you to do what they want you to do so that they can have what they want you to have. And again, something like the example I gave, we're going to see it probably in certain areas, certain regions, certain cities in here. So really, really stay on top of it. Okay, moving down into our last section of what's going on for April in world events. We have the soul self energy, and I always like to bring this in. Yes, it's world events, but you know, a lot of things that are out there these days, they're attacks on the soul. They're attacks on God, divine presence in the world. And whether you want to see it that way or not, you know, we have these dynamics playing out. And so knowing what's aligned or in the soul self energy, we again have an aspect of what we've got to work with maybe or what might be coming down. So from the 1st through the 5th, what we're actually going to see is a lot of support for true peace. So we're going to see some stuff coming out where people are saying, we just want to have some peace in our world, in our communities, in our states, wherever, our countries. And the interesting thing is this call for peace that will come up from people, from the soul's energy, from the divine presence energy, could be a cause for the power battles. Um, in some ways, it could be a trigger for them to take some of the more confining actions that we've already talked about in there. Um, but I think overall, we're going to see some more caring for each other going on. And the corruption hates this. They hate it. These corrupt factions, they hate it. They don't want love. They don't want you to care about one another. They don't want you to say, hey, your house got flooded. Come live at my house for a while. They don't want that. Okay? They want you dependent on the system. So I think some of this peace movement that happens, that's very soulful, that's very beautiful to watch, some of these things that come out, um, we could see people of different belief systems that might be persecuted coming out and speaking of of getting along with other people that are supposed to be in battle with them. These sorts of things. So I think that's going to be an interesting piece to watch. But again, it could be a trigger. It could be a trigger for other stuff to get activated. We're going to see the past used to create triggers during this time as well. So I think we could see some January 6th things come up. I think we could bring some things up like where there's ongoing wars between certain countries that have been going on for a long time. Past things resurface that tries to get those battles going, that try to get people to pull out of loving one another and going into hating one another. Um, and these things will be done to block forward momentum. So, okay, we can't stop these people from doing this peace thing. So now we're going to bring up all of this past stuff to get them arguing again or to overshadow them or things like that, to block this movement that they're making, this progression that they're making. You know, we can't have that progression. And so we're probably going to see something deep in the past brought up during this time, brought out with all the key players. And, you know, we're talking everybody. We're talking Trump, Biden, Clinton's, Obama's, whatever, all these key players that we have in our world right now. And they're going to be unresolved things. We may see things come out with the Clintons' connections to Haiti. We may see things come out with Obama's connections to Kenya. We may see things come out with Trump in relation to his Uncle John, who did a lot of research and dynamics at MIT, and who knows what else. You know, there could be other things there too. We could see connections come out with Biden and things that happened around his son, Beau, the one that was killed. We could see more Kennedy stuff coming out, and I think the JFK assassinations could really come up during this time again, because it can trigger things in people, and it can also, you know, can also be a good distraction in a lot of ways, and it actually ties a lot of all the key players together, really. I mean, it's a common tie between all of them, and it's a huge unresolved pain, not just in individuals and families, but in our country. It's a huge unresolved pain that has happened in our country, those assassinations. So we could definitely see that come back up again. The 6th through the 29th, we're going to be learning a lot about what has created our imbalances and division. So again, this nourishes the soul, right? Because when we understand what creates the division and the imbalances, then we can do something about it. And we can start to make the changes and the shifts that need to be made. And we will come to realize that it's created through extreme views, which is part of why back at the beginning I was talking about that, right? We need to come out of those extremisms and, you know, it's these extremist views that have created the division. They're the ones that are fueling the division between people. And again, having those conversations, right? Bringing in the authenticity. And authenticity is going to be a big factor when we have these open discourses and people talking on these platforms and, you know, these different podcasts and things like that. Authenticity is going to be a key factor in what people believe. And if people don't believe that people are authentic, they're not going to be buying the stories. And so I think we're going to see a lot of stuff bubble up as a result of that. Also, we're going to see again these opposites maybe working together. Um, if integrity is kept, and opposites start working together, we're probably going to see some pretty powerful things come up. And people are going to start realizing, yeah, we're both at danger with these extremists. And, so why don't we work with each other and realize that the only way that we're both going to survive, or any of us are going to survive, is if we get rid of this extremist. Because if we allow, we can't do it individually. We can't alleviate them individually, but if we, are working with each other, then we can bring the extremists down. If we don't bring the extremists down, none of us are going to make it. So that's going to be a key piece in there. And we're going to be shown how to break away. I think these people that are doing this, and again, through them coming together in integrity, the ones that do are going to help us see how to break away from the tyranny, how to break away from the corruption, how to get back on course again in a way that actually will afford people to be able to have some kind of a life again, a decent life again for a lot of people. We're going to see a lot of leaders falling out of power or stepping down from power as well during this time due to the exposure that comes out. So again, they're going to try their tactics and, these heavy dictator extremist types, and they're going to try their tactics to to confine people or whatever else, and it's going to backfire. They're going to get caught. There's going to be a lot of truth coming out, and it's going to force them to step down. So we can see some stuff being overthrown in this time. The 30th, so the last day of the month in here, and the last piece we have on this soul energy is a lot of closure, a lot of endings, a lot of transformation, a lot of death. We could see things happening to whistleblowers at that time, and things that appear to be accidents that are not accidents happening, and just bringing a lot of completion to things, which I think, as hard as it is for that completion to come out, as hard as it is to see some of those things, it's also a very beneficial thing. It's there will be a sense of ease, I think, for some people, and a lot of people to see that coming through. But also, some of those endings are going to be hard endings, and they're not going to be pleasant endings in there. So we're going to have a mixture of things in there. But these closures and these completions and these endings must happen before we can move forward, before we can move in, receive that so-called brighter future, that more soul-based way of living coming through. And granted, we've got a long, long way to go with that, but we can certainly start opening the doors, but we can't open those doors until we close other doors and close out other things. On this last day of the month, again, it will be a bittersweetness, because there will be some people that will not fare well. Unfortunately, they will truly have sacrificed their life to bring things forward. On the other hand, we will see hope being returned on that last day, and we will learn a lot from our endings. And this will be a time of completing chapters. So I think we may see some court rulings come through at this time. Again, we're going to see these variety of different pieces coming up on the 30th, and I think we're gonna have hope, and I think we're gonna learn a lot. I think those lessons are gonna maybe come full circle or come into completion at that time. So, hey, we've got a lot going on this month. And, you know, it's your right to be healthy and free. So don't forget that. Don't just jump into things because you're a little bit scared. Um, most things are about putting you, the corruption circles want to put you in fear to get you to do things. And you have to stand strong enough and say, nope, I think I'll think about it a little bit longer. Um, their plans will probably blow up sooner than it takes you to fully research things and to get through things and to find out. And they can't do anything without compliance. They can't do things without people agreeing to it. So hold that in mind and hold on. For a lot of people, they're going to be an observation. The average person is going to be in a lot of observation, but we need to be aware. And some of these key points, again, don't let them twist things around on you. Um, Follow up on them. Don't just say, "Oh, okay, I'll leave for 2 months," and then come back and not have your house anymore. Um, Watch these things, take care of yourself, honor yourself, look at what's important, what's valuable in there. Because until we come back into values, until we come back into placing priority on well-being, you know, we got to do that. We got to do that if we're going to dissolve some of this stuff that is working against our well-being and working against divine presence and God in the world. So with that, I hope this has been valuable. Again, check out my book. Jump over to my website, compassioncodes.com. I think it's in the comments down there. Oops, there we go. Pick up your copy so that you have your own book to work with, and you have heads up on all of this information. I just go into a little more detail on it on the videos, really. And, give it a like, give it a share out, subscribe to the channel, all those good things. I so appreciate you guys taking the time to listen and wanting to know and wanting to work with foresight and wanting to understand some of these deeper layers of what's happening beneath the surface and what's going on so that you can make some wise choices in your own life. And that's truly the goal, because the more of us that are making these wise choices, the more chance that we have to create a world that is amazing and wonderful to live in. I mean, Earth in and of itself is incredible. And if we can just get people a little more there, and it's like anything, you gotta clear out the toxins. You gotta clear out the toxins to be healthy, and that's part of what we're going through in our world right now. So hang in there, everybody. I'll be back with you next month, and I'll see you soon.